It's Halloween season, and what better way to celebrate than with a slasher flick? Perhaps even one aptly titled Halloween. Michael Myers. You know the name, you know the mask. The silent, stalking, slashing icon that's been haunting our screens for over 4 decades. And with 13 films in the franchise, you might be asking yourself which Halloween movie is actually worth your time. Because let's face it, you probably don't have time to sit through all 13 of these films like I just did. That's right, I just watched every single one of these, including the strange, weird, culty one in the middle, just to determine once and for all what is the ultimate Halloween movie experience. And I didn't just go off of vibes. I used a whole multitude of metrics, including atmosphere, scares, kills, story, and even the mask he's wearing during the movie. All of this to bring you the scientifically proven best Halloween film in the franchise. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly which Halloween movie you should watch this spooky season. Let's get into it. Alright, it's time to get cozy, enjoy a nice fall evening together. So grab yourself a drink, relax. I've got myself this nice Epic Brewing pumpkin porter to carry me through this adventure. Not a sponsor, however, I'm taking sponsors. I'm ready to talk about Michael Myers and the Halloween franchise. I did go ahead and watch all 13 of them over the course of the last couple of months as I've been prepping for this video, so they're all fresh in my mind and ready to talk about. Okay, so just as I did with my Jessica Alba video earlier this year, I decided instead of ranking these from my favorite Halloween film to the least favorite Halloween film, I wanted to break these down in a different way. When there's 13 movies in a franchise, sometimes you just want to put on the one with the most of what you want to see in a slasher movie with Michael Myers. Okay, so let's bring in the doctor, and we're going to talk about how we analyze these films. The first metric here is going to be story, which is based on a scale of 1 to 10. Next up, we have performances, and then horror. So far, pretty self-explanatory. Our fourth category is going to be Michael Myers moments. So following that, we have 3 smaller categories: Halloween vibes on a scale of 1 through 5. We're talking, how much does this transport you into the feeling of Halloween season? We're talking fall leaves, Halloween costumes, Halloween parties, all that kind of stuff. Next up, we have masks on a scale of 1 through 5. And this is just going to be, does the mask suck or does it rock? And our final category is just going to be fun, 1 through 5. Did I have fun watching this movie on a scale of 1 through 5? So we can get a total of 55 points, 55 burgers, 55 fries, 55 shake. I probably shouldn't be having alcohol while I make this video, but we have a total of 55 points possible. And at the very end, we're going to reveal our final scores of each of these movies. All right, it's enough of me yapping. Let's rock and roll, baby. First on our list is 1978's Halloween, directed by John Carpenter and starring Jamie Lee Curtis. This is one of the most iconic slasher movies of all time. If you haven't seen this movie by now, I'm not really sure why you're even watching this video, unless, I guess, it's to determine whether or not you should watch the first one, and the short answer is yes, you should. Though it's not technically the first slasher movie, it is one of the very first ones that established so many of the tropes that you see throughout slasher movies in the 80s, 90s, and so on. So for that reason alone, watching this movie now does have some aspects that feel a little bit tropey or predictable because you've seen other slasher movies that copy this film, but they started here and they're executed amazingly well in this movie. One of the things I really love about the first Halloween is how intensely they build up Michael Myers. The very first scene shows him as a young boy as he kills his sister on Halloween, and it's a pretty horrifying, shocking start to the movie. That sets the tone for just how sadistic Michael Myers is, and there were really never any answers to why he committed this crime, which I think is one of the biggest things that makes Michael Myers so fascinating, is that we have Dr. Loomis, who is a psychiatrist who's trying to analyze and study who Michael Myers is, and after years and years of therapy with him while he was in the sanitarium, Loomis has determined that this man is the devil incarnate, that there is no rhyme or reason or salvageable quality to Michael Myers, which is the question mark to why do killers do what they do. It could be anybody behind that mask, We don't know what their motives are. There's something unchained about them. And a big chunk of the first half of this movie is really just these stalker kind of POV moments, this looming, creepy presence. I think it's just incredibly unsettling for that. We also get a lot of POV moments with Michael Myers, which I find interesting because we never know what's going on in his head, but we do get his perspective. And I think this movie shows a lot of restraint in what Michael Myers is willing to do. Like, he doesn't just kill everyone he encounters necessarily. He seems to be a little bit calculated, which is a very scary element of him. But then other scenes where he's actually killing some of his victims, like the famous scene where he stabs the guy up against the wall, and then he tilts his head and he looks at him. There's like this curiosity to Michael Myers that I think is really frightening. Like, he's just like studying his victim. Right after that, Michael Myers, puts on a sheet and then that character's glasses and goes up and kind of a ghost disguise. And I think that's a really chilling moment too, because it's so childlike. Like, he's gonna play dress up again, and I think there's some weird psychology that's explored there. Those little details that add to the extra fear of Michael. Also, the sound of his breathing through the mask is always present in his kill scenes, and I think that's like a really terrifying aspect about the first movie that kind of disappears as they go on. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm obviously jumping straight into the horror aspects of this, but I think this movie has a lot of iconic Michael Myers moments, even though I think some of the acting in this movie by some of the teenagers or some of the side characters is a little bit weaker. Loomis and Jamie Lee Curtis bring it home. This movie was shot in California, and it doesn't have like any actual fall colors or leaves or anything in the trees, or like the grass is still perfectly green, but they went through a huge amount of effort to bring in dead leaves, and they actually throw them all over the ground or have them come and wisping in from behind the camera, and that does a lot to add to the effect and the feel of this movie. I think this is one of the more scary movies because it's very tense and very slow to get going, but I do think that plays into a little bit of some of its knocks. I think the movie is a little slower paced, and to a modern audience might find it a little bit slower. I love this movie. Moving on. Halloween 2. This movie came out in 1981 and is not directed by John Carpenter, but the same producers are involved, and Jamie Lee Curtis reprises her role as Laurie Strode. It's clear right from the outset, just at the very beginning, that the production value is higher. The opening scene takes place right after the end of the first movie, and Michael Myers is going through the neighborhoods, and we see all these trick-or-treaters, and it's a very full, fleshed out neighborhood. And I think this is one of my favorite sequences in the movie because Michael Myers is breaking into people's homes, and he steals, a kitchen knife from one home, but we're always questioning, like, is he going to attack the homeowner or not? And I really like that question mark that happens throughout these scenes. I'll leave it up to you guys when you watch it because I think that's where the horror comes from. Now, this movie in general, though, is gorier, it's more graphic, and it's even, I would say, more campy. It starts to fall in line with a bit more of what you expect from like an 80s slasher movie, just from its side characters, right? Like, they don't even really bother setting up any of these characters. Like, Laurie Strode is taken to the hospital, and then it's like all the nurses are in like sexy nurse outfits, and the guys are just kind of tool bags and stuff. It's very classic slasher in that way, whereas the first one feels very grounded and very real and horrifying in that way. This one kind of goes to a slightly more exaggerated and fantastical place with it, but I'm actually here for it. I think that Halloween 2 is a really fun movie. And honestly, I like that they don't even try to set up the side characters. They just start getting right into the action of the movie. In fact, the story here in general is pretty non-existent. We still have Dr. Loomis, and he's dramatic as ever and great. But like, as far as Laurie Strode is concerned, she's mostly in the hospital, and there's basically no character development for her in this movie. But I guess they do take some narrative swings, like they are clearly trying to set up a franchise in this movie. A franchise that, mind you, later retcons a lot of the decisions that happen in this movie. But still, I mean, one of the funniest choices to me is at the beginning of the movie, there's a scene which they kind of think Michael Myers dies because he's involved in a car accident. And then it turns out to be Ben Tramer, who is a referenced love interest that Laurie Strode has a crush on in the first movie. but he is now dressed up as Michael for some reason, just because I guess it's a generic Halloween costume that they sell. And he happens to be the one that's killed in this scene. But I find it irrelevant for them to even reference that it's Ben Tramer. And it just feels like a really weird narrative tie to try to connect the two movies that didn't really make a lot of sense to me. Maybe it was there to give Jamie Lee Curtis like the out, to give her a narrative excuse to move on from that romance. They have him die. All of it is unnecessary, in my opinion, because then the new romance that they kind of try to set up with this character, Jimmy, it just doesn't really go anywhere and is completely unnecessary, too. So, yeah, I don't know what they were doing, honestly. When it comes to story stuff, this movie's all over the place, but it doesn't mean that this movie does not mean business. This movie's in the business of relentless killing spree Michael Myers, and Donald Pleasance on the other half of that going full send. And between those two elements, I think that Halloween 2 is incredibly fun, with some of the best Michael Myers moments in the franchise, including a scene with him stepping out of just complete black darkness. It's so perfectly lit, and then has this needle in his hand, and horrifying Dr. Needle scene that is hard to watch. And then the final kind of moment with Michael Myers where he's bleeding from the eyes, but just swinging wildly and ravagely around our heroes. It is a memorable and very horrifying moment with Michael Myers. So anyway, moving on. Now, Tommy Lee Wallace, the director of Halloween 3, he actually was heavily involved in the first Halloween as well, and great friends with John Carpenter. So he and John Carpenter, when they originally envisioned Halloween and kind of pitched this idea to the producers, their whole concept was that it would be an anthology film series, meaning that every story would be a different story entirely based around Halloween. But because Halloween 1 was so successful, the producers wanted another Michael Myers, Jamie Lee Curtis Halloween film. Jamie Lee Curtis did not want to be pigeonholed as a scream queen any longer. She wanted more for her career, and she was not going to come back for another Halloween movie. Well, now that Jamie Lee Curtis was out, somehow producers allowed it to happen that they were going to give up on their biggest IP of Michael Myers and keep the Halloween name and make a Halloween film completely unrelated to Michael Myers or Haddonfield, no Donald Pleasance. None of the stuff that were trademarks of the Halloween franchise made it into Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. This is an entirely new story. Silver Shamrock. Yeah, that plays constantly throughout this movie. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. This film kicks off following our main doctor character as one of his most recent patients gets assassinated in the hospital that our doctor character works at. When a pretty girl shows up who claims that the man killed was her father and is crying, the doctor feels an inclination to help her solve the mystery of who killed this man. Essentially, there is a little bit of a brainwashing campaign run by this Shamrock company, and I'll kind of leave the rest up to mystery if you don't know the finale of it, because I kind of knew some of the things behind it, but this movie's strength is that it is a mystery. So it's very intriguing right out of the gate, and there's a lot of questions our main characters have as they're going through and learning different things, and people are getting murdered and killed in what I will say is the most gruesome way so far for Halloween films. We don't have Michael Myers moments in this movie, but we do have some of the most brutal VFX work, like awful, like scarring my memory. There's the scene where this little laser patch lasers a woman's face off, and then we linger on it, and the mutilated face, and this giant bug comes out of her mouth, and it's just the most disturbing shit that I've ever seen. And that's not the end of it. There's more stuff in here that's pretty brutal to watch. When it comes to Halloween vibes, I love this town they go to. Gorgeous autumn vibes to it. It's a very Halloween feeling kind of movie. I think its greatest weak point is its finale. It starts to get a little bit like a James Bond movie where they're kind of trapped inside of this big villain base, and our main hero kind of gets the rundown on the villain's plot, and it's very like Prisoner while he, takes out a bunch of people and whatever. It's a little weak in some of those moments, but I still think the movie is very entertaining. It's very worth watching. I really like Tom Atkins as our main doctor character. He's seemingly an alcoholic, and he's not really that present with his kids, and he has an ex-wife. And then our other main lead, which is the daughter of the man that was murdered, Ellie, played by Stacey Nelkin. She is a little bit more of a unique and interesting heroine character too. I like how the two of them work together, and it's not just like he is the hero to her. They're kind of both questioning and brave and bold in kind of the silver shamrock town that they're at. And I really like the two of them together. It's a good dynamic between them. Yeah, I grew a lot of respect for this movie in the special features that I had on the Blu-ray disc and kind of learning more about how the movie was made and the people involved. I think it's one of the more fascinating movies in the Halloween franchise just because it's the only one that doesn't involve Michael Myers. Like I said, it has a cult following. It's got some really unique stuff to it. It's a good Halloween movie still. It's obviously going to fall low in my late rankings because it doesn't qualify for Michael Myers moments or even like Michael Myers mask, which I've yet to talk about so far. But the first two movies, I think his mask is great. So there you go. But in this movie, it does have Halloween masks. So I use a qualifier for that at the end of this. But yeah, that's Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. You should probably watch this movie for yourself and make up your own opinion on it. Moving on. I'll top myself off here. Ooh, something I failed to mention about any Halloween movie thus far is the score by John Carpenter. Obviously, he created the iconic Halloween theme song, but in Halloween 3, we get some of those cues from the first two Halloween movies that actually make it feel part of the same franchise. But there are new theme songs by John Carpenter, who does the music for this one, that are some of the best in the whole Halloween franchise. My favorite song is Chariots of Pumpkins. Go listen to this song. It is so good. And I mean, John Carpenter in general, his 80s horror movie music is so good. Now we're moving on. Only 10 more to go. We're going to pick up the pace here a little bit. Halloween 4, Return of Michael Myers. As you can imagine, people were excited about this movie because, hey, Michael Myers is returning. But no Jamie Lee Curtis. However, Donald Pleasence does make his grand return and is even more extra than he's ever been, and I'm here for it. I'm just going to say this right now. For the next 3 films, 4, 5, and 6, Donald Pleasence is one of the biggest reasons and enjoyment factors for watching these movies for me. So Michael Myers has returned, Laurie Strode doesn't. How they explain that is that Laurie Strode died in a car accident, but not before having a baby. Oh shit, that's a bit of a spoiler for Halloween 4. Spoilers! Jamie Lloyd is the daughter of Laurie Strode, and ultimately Michael Myers is back, and now he wants Jamie Lloyd. A couple of big things about Halloween 4 that stand out to me. One, it feels like a made-for-TV movie. It is a serious step down in production quality. This movie is the first of what many people call a trilogy of Halloween films, and all 3 of these next movies were shot actually in Utah, which is where I live, believe it or not. It's a different location, which I think offers great fall and autumn vibes because they use real fall trees. We get the fall season here in beautiful areas with many fall trees and fall leaves. So I'm getting really redundant here. But for whatever reason, this movie just feels like it was shot and made for TV. All of that being said, it doesn't mean it's not a fun movie to watch. This is a fun, good, bad movie. If you know what I mean, where like a lot of the acting is pretty bad or rough in this one. There's some story elements that are pretty bad or rough as well in this one. But if you can kind of get on board with that, I think that the editing and pacing and sequences in this movie are still fun enough that it's an enjoyable movie. Jamie Lloyd is a great character, and I really love seeing kind of the development of her. She's a phenomenal child actress, by the way. Michael Myers, his mask is god-awful in this one. In my opinion, one of the worst masks for Michael Myers. I'm not really sure why they changed it, but it just feels wrong. And it kind of just lacks in memorable Michael Myers moments as well. It takes a really long time for the Michael Myers action to happen in this one, though I do like the finale. In fact, I like the finale quite a lot. There's a whole rooftop scene that is very intense. And if not for the rooftop scene and the final sequence in this movie, this would rate a lot lower, but I think the last 20 minutes are so solid. And then the very final twist of the movie, which I'm just going to say, quick spoiler, just fast forward like 20 seconds. I'll put a little spoiler thing on the screen. But here we go. The very end of this movie, when they reveal that Jamie Lloyd is actually a killer too, and she kills her mom in the bathtub, like, holy shit, my jaw dropped. And it's all like maybe spawned from a moment where she touched Michael's hand after they kill Michael. It's like, man, that was like genuinely a really well done moment. Anyway, but yeah, Halloween 4, it has some stuff going for it. I know a lot of people really like this movie. It doesn't really quite do it for me. I still had a better than okay time watching it. So there's that. I tally these up at the end. I don't know. This might actually make it higher than I think. That's what's kind of fun about the scoring system. Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. The production value is back up. Thank God. This does not have the made-for-TV feel, and I think you'll notice it if you watch these movies back-to-back with each other, because this one does have the same locations, a lot of the same principal cast. They use the same Michael Myers house that the last movie used, which is different, by the way, than the first original movie. But now that our production value caught up to what I think are beautiful film locations, and I'm not biased because they're shot in Utah, but huge step up from that front. Also, right out of the gate in this movie, there are some surprise twists that I just did not see coming. I don't want to spoil necessarily some of that right away, but there are characters that die at the beginning of this film, or a character that dies at the beginning of this film, that I did not think was going to happen. I also didn't know what to expect with Jamie Lloyd based on how the end of the last movie was, but I think they handled that in a very unique and interesting way. It immediately sets the stakes and tone for this movie that anything could happen. Like, no one feels like they have plot armor aside from Loomis at this point, because Loomis is kind of like two sides of the same coin as Michael Myers. They're both like immortal. The other characters that are introduced in Halloween 5, I'm genuinely like, I don't know who will survive, how far they'll make it, if this girl's even the main character, because of the twists that happen in the first 20 minutes. And I think that makes this movie have higher stakes, have higher horror effects, and is a much more engaging movie because of those things. Now, this movie does introduce some of the like weird culty stuff that we get to later on, like the whole tattoo on Michael Myers' wrist is introduced, and the kind of connection that he spiritually has with Jamie Lloyd. And some of those elements, it's kind of like, they're not my favorite things, but if you just kind of like lean into them and choose to have a good time with those story elements, there's a lot of fun to be had in this movie. I just think this movie leans into all of its good qualities, and it has a good time doing it. It's not trying to be something that it isn't. It's not necessarily trying to redo what the first Halloween movie did. It's just being its own thing, which are all great compliments. Now, I know this movie gets some flack for its Michael Myers mask as well. I personally really like this mask. It is the most different as far as like facial expression is concerned, which is kind of a weird thing to say because like he's a masked character, but we do associate Michael Myers with a certain type of facial expression. And this one has like a little bit of a different facial expression, or at least the most different. But personally, I really like this mask. It kind of diversifies this movie, especially now that we're in the kind of the era where we expect a different mask every movie. I think this one has like a unique flair to it that I really like. And I think this has some fantastic Michael Myers moments, but it has them consistently throughout the movie, including the one with the scythe and like the muscle car scene. So there's some really good stuff in Halloween 5, and I just had a blast watching this movie. Maybe part of it was because I didn't expect to. It was one of the ones I hadn't seen, but I absolutely loved it. Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. This is the cult one I talked about up front. This is the end of the Thorn trilogy. I bring up the Thorn trilogy now because I feel like it was mostly an afterthought of how to make elements from number 4 and number 5 work in number 6. Now, something I failed to mention in the 5th one, there's these kind of random shots of this kind of like cowboy character. We never see his face. He's mysterious, and he shows up in like random scenes. He's kind of watching things happen. So they're establishing elements that they're going to set up at a later time, but they're new mystery elements, right? Well, number 6, it kind of just goes full on fucking wacko with its story. It has the cowboy character, it has the curse of Michael Myers, and which is the tattoo and his connection to Jamie Lloyd. And now it has this onslaught of cult scenes. You know, we see like this whole sequence of Michael Myers as a baby with this cult in the very beginning. And I can't even remember like what half of the movie is about. But like half of the movie is tied up in all the cult shit. And it's all excuses to try to explain why Michael Myers is doing what Michael Myers is doing, which honestly is just unnecessary. We don't need an explanation for why he is the way he is. And if we do, maybe a more grounded or psychologically interesting one would be preferred. Granted, I think Rob Zombie attempts that later, and that isn't necessarily great either. So who f***ing knows? But if you're going to watch it, there's a couple of versions of this movie to watch. There's the theatrical initial cut, which people tend to call the MTV cut, which is a version of the film that attempted to remove as much of the cult stuff as they could because it didn't do well with test audiences. The problem is the movie is so built around this story of the cult stuff that you can't just remove it from an already shot movie. So there are reshoots and there are some aspects of the theatrical cut that are totally changed. The other aspect is Donald Pleasence passed away right after filming the movie. So they tried to reshoot so much of it, but he had already passed away. So there's a lot of complications with the theatrical cut to this film. They also tried to amp up the Michael Myers stuff. And so they call it the MTV cut because there's this kind of like vigorous editing style, this almost music video editing style where they splice in more gore and there's like slasher stuff that happens on screen. And all of that is a part of the theatrical cut, which is actually considered the worst version of the movie, because in their attempts to fix it, they really just made a messier movie overall. The original Halloween 6, which is now available on 4K thanks to Shout Factory, here, and this cool Blu-ray actually contains both movies. The original version of Halloween 6 is a better film, but only in the sense that it actually makes a little bit more sense. The flow of the movie is just more intentional, you could say, because I don't want to go saying that the cult stuff makes sense anyway, because the movie already is confusing and doesn't make a lot of sense. But, all right, I'm getting pretty wrapped up in that. But what's cool is this movie does introduce Paul Rudd as a grown-up version of Tommy, the young boy from the very first movie that Laurie Strode babysat and witnessed all the crimes. So he is kind of grown up to be a very quiet and kind of strange kid, but he has done a lot of the research into this kind of culty stuff, and he's working with Donald Pleasence, and I actually really like his character. I think he's a very good portrayal of a grown-up Tommy, a little strange, a little odd, he gets bullied, and I just think that's a fascinating and unique take on that character. Jamie Lloyd is now played by an entirely different actress because they age her up. I think that's kind of a missed opportunity. The original Jamie Lloyd is like a very good actress as the child, and the new Jamie Lloyd just doesn't bring with it the same like connection points. But yeah, overall, Halloween 6 is just lacking Michael Myers moments. It's lacking good horror, good story. And I think all of that is just muddied up by its cult stuff. Now, what I will give it props for is its Halloween vibes and its overall just kind of like setting. And I think the Michael Myers mask is totally fine and cool in this one. So those are all positives, and I think that'll like bump its ranking up. But yeah, there's just a lot you have to look past to watch this movie, and unfortunately that makes it a little bit of a chore to actually digest. Moving on. 1998. 20 years removed from the original Halloween film, and Jamie Lee Curtis is back, baby. Halloween H2O, and I'm not talking water, I'm talking 20, as in Halloween 20 years later. Yeah, kind of a confusing and weird title. I remember watching this movie as a kid because it was the only Halloween movie my mom liked. And my mom, by the way, is a huge like Halloween the holiday fanatic. But when it comes to like the violent stuff and the scary stuff, she kind of keeps it at arm's length. But Halloween H2O was always one of them that she really liked. And I think that has entirely everything to do with its ending. It's a very rewarding ending for the viewer. It's not as cynical and down and depressing as most horror movies and slasher movies actually are. So my nostalgia wasn't enough for me to remember what happened in the movie, so it was still like seeing it fresh or for the first time. Right out of the gate, I noticed very quickly, and I'm not just talking from the poster art, but the actual tone and feel of this movie is heavily inspired by the Scream films. At this point, 2 Scream movies had come out and been massively successful, and you could argue kind of revitalized the slasher genre. Halloween H2O is the closest thing to a Scream movie I've ever seen that's not called Scream. And spoiler alert, I love Scream. So that's not a bad thing for me. I don't know if it is for other people, but I really think that this movie taking a few notes from the Scream franchise was a positive. The John Carpenter music is still laced in there, but we get like revamped versions of the Halloween theme, of course, that are very 90s. Strengths is that it doesn't try to repeat anything that's been done before. In fact, it's not even in Haddonfield. This is in Northern California. Laurie Strode has returned, and she's under a witness protection program where she's changed her name. She has a son this time, played by Josh Hartnett. I totally skipped over the whole continuity stuff. So the continuity of the Halloween franchise gets kind of messy, right? Because the last thing we saw of Laurie Strode was that she died. Or at least that's what we heard in Halloween 4, that she died, but then we discover she actually had a daughter, and that was Jamie Lloyd. And then Jamie Lloyd becomes connected to Michael Myers, and there's all that shenanigans that happen. Well, Halloween H2O attempts to kind of retcon some of that storyline. Her death was faked because she joined a witness protection program, which I actually think is a really clever story beat. Early versions of the draft and the script attempted to still include the Jamie Lloyd moments, but that she actually sent her up for adoption to keep her safe and with a different last name as well. But there are all the culty things that kind of fucked up the ability to see it as the same canon. So you have to disregard the last 3 films. I like the journey that Laurie Strode is on in this movie. You know, this is the first movie without Donald Pleasance, rest in peace, and he's definitely missed here. But Laurie Strode, I think for the first time in the franchise, truly feels like the main character. And I really love how Jamie Lee Curtis plays the part. I think she absolutely nails the feeling of having been through traumatic events, but she's really trying to keep those in and deal with them in her own way. And now that it's Halloween again, she's just going through the same triggers that she goes through every year, but she's done her best to raise her kid, and she's made some poor life decisions as far as she's divorced and like he was apparently abusive and whatever. Like she's dealing with all these traumatic things that way, but she's like a strong female character. I really like her in this movie. The scenes with Michael Myers are some of the most chilling, and I think the best representation of him since the first 2. There's a bathroom scene where a mom and a daughter go into the bathroom, and Michael Myers comes in and just steals her purse so that he can steal her car. But the whole time you're paranoid, like, is he gonna kill the mom and the daughter? And we get this shot of him looking through the bathroom stall, and it's absolutely like dart dagger, like, oh shit, that's terrifying, you know. But he doesn't necessarily kill them. It's hard not to spoil these movies, I'm sorry. I love that kind of stuff because you're watching the movie and you're questioning, is this character safe or not? Whereas in some other Halloween movies, anytime Michael Myers shows up and has an engagement with a character, we can kind of just be like, oh, well, he's going to kill that character. I like the Michael Myers that you just question, will we have a survivor or not? And this movie is very effective at that. Now, a lot of people rag on the Michael Myers mask in this movie, and I'm with you on it. But I think the biggest issue with it is that you can see Myers' eyes, you know, like that's the part that takes you out of it sometimes. But the movie's very well shot and lit, so it's very few times you actually really get to see him up close. But when you do, I think that's what like takes a little of the fear out. It's only 86 minutes, so it's one of the faster ones. It gets into things. I really care about the characters. I think this is one of the stronger storylines as far as all of the characters. Like, I care about them. And when it comes to the finale, I think this is the best finale thus far in any Halloween movie. The stakes just feel that high. The way this movie ends is so damn rewarding, without me completely spoiling it. But those of you that have seen it know, and it's such a cool send-off. And honestly, this should have been Halloween Ends. And then if you want to make another Halloween, fine, but just start anew, I guess, because in a way, this is like an alternate timeline. If it's just a little divergent tangent to give us what this movie gives us and kind of like a send-off for Jamie Lee Curtis, then this movie rocks and you should watch it. I think it's a phenomenal Halloween movie, and I have to move on. Halloween Resurrection 2002, 4 years after Halloween H2O, and we start right off with Laurie Strode in the sanitarium for having now murdered, spoiler alert for H2O. Okay, at the end of H2O, spoiler, the end of H2O, Jamie Lee Curtis lobs off the head of Michael Myers, and it's so goddamn satisfying. In this movie, spoiler, Michael Myers, it's revealed that he was like a police officer that Michael Myers had crushed his throat, hurried up and thrown his outfit on him. And so when Jamie Lee Curtis killed him, it wasn't really Michael Myers. And now she's living with the guilt of having killed someone who wasn't Michael Myers. Really fucking stupid. Just a terrible decision. I would believe it more that Michael Myers just came back for no explainable reason than I would the scenario that they came up with. But whatever. Now, Laurie Strode is in the hospital. Michael Myers is back. He shows up. We get a couple of kill scenes that are absolutely mind-bogglingly stupid, with a security officer who checks the goddamn laundromat and sees his partner's head in the dryer and then trips over the decapitated body behind him, only to then be killed by Michael Myers. It's like, dude, you walked in there and you didn't see the decapitated body, but you investigated the dryer. Like, it's so stupid. I know I'm probably hung up on like dumb things right now because slashers are known to be stupid, but after H2O, such a high tier movie, this is what we get. It is ridiculous. And if you know how the first sequence ends, it's bullshit. It's fucking stupid. So 17 minutes in, we get the title, Halloween Resurrection, and then the movie really starts, right? I wish the movie had just started after that. Don't feel like you have to figure out how to tie up the end of H2O in a new way so that you can have Michael Myers return. Just evaporate that first 17 minutes, and Halloween Resurrection goes from this bad to this bad, because it's still fucking bad. Like, it's still bad. Okay, the rest of Halloween Resurrection, though, yeah, I like the concept. I think the story of the rest of the movie is actually a really fun concept, because a bunch of teens are asked to stay overnight in the old Michael Myers house, which is supposedly haunted, for a reality show. A reality show that Tyra Banks and Busta Rhymes are filming. Busta Rhymes is a massive highlight. Tyra Banks is barely in the movie, but she's right there on the poster next to Laurie Strode, also barely in the movie. So anyway, a bunch of kids go into the Michael Myers house and they engage in this reality show of spending the night in the house. Now, a couple of things that make this movie really bad are the fact that every one of these kids has like a digital camera attached to their head. And so we get just this onslaught of POV shots that are grainy and really shitty, like 480p digital camera work from, 2002. It wouldn't be the end of the world if we only got some of that every once in a while, but it's like every third shot. And it's like in conversation scenes, so from the rest of the movie, once we're in this house, the last hour of this movie, every third or fourth shot is just this shitty ass digital camera work. And it is so jarring. It just takes you out of the movie. There's times where it's effective, sure, but it's like it would have been more effective if it was left to just a few moments here and there. Also, none of these kids we care about. And I'm okay with that usually because I don't mind laughing at like shitty teenage characters. Like, that's part of the fun of a slasher movie. But whatever, we don't get invested. And then there's like a separate Halloween party that's going on. And there's all these kids that continue to group up as they're watching the reality show play out. And I think it's a fun concept. Like, they start texting the girl in the house, like, oh, Michael Myers is behind you and stuff. But they're using like old like AOL chats. So it's all very delayed and slow. So in that sense, it's a movie that could have only been made in its exact era, but it's also very dated at the same time. I got to give it props. It's a clever concept and it's a good concept. But yeah, zero memorable Michael Myers moments. The kill scenes are not memorable. I can't even think of any of them. Probably because they just shift to like really shitty, obscure digital camera shots. It's like basically a found footage film. Busta Rhymes, he's the only bright spot of this entire movie. So for that, there's some credit there. Michael Myers' mask is good, but what, I don't know, like, cool. This movie isn't even fun in a bad way. Well, that wraps up our first stretch of 8 films, which is the Mustafa Akkad part of the series. He was a big part of making these movies happen, that then passed away, and that kind of halted the films. But there are still 5 more films to go. So in 2007, Rob Zombie and Dimension Films acquired the rights or some shit. I don't really know the story behind it, so I shouldn't attempt to talk about it. But somehow Rob Zombie found himself making a Halloween movie. The movie is titled Halloween. This movie is essentially a retelling of the original Halloween movie. This is Rob Zombie's remake. So it's the same story from 1978's Halloween 1. What Rob Zombie did differently with it is the backstory element, which takes up about, the first 15 minutes of the first Halloween, if even. This movie decides to spend about 45 minutes on that. We see the kid and his life as he's growing up and getting bullied and all the things that lead to him eventually killing his older sister. And then we get a lot of psychiatric scenes with Dr. Loomis, who in this movie is played by Malcolm McDowell. And I love Malcolm McDowell, but his performance as Loomis just pales in comparison, and it feels a little bit like he's walking through the motions. And we get this kind of essentially this first half of a movie that's, let's get in the mind of Michael Myers. And that's probably the biggest weak point of the Rob Zombie Halloween movies, is that we try to get answers on who Michael Myers is. And I think that takes away an element of the fear. But the second half of this movie, once Michael Myers actually comes home to Haddonfield, I really, really liked this movie. It's a remake, sure, but it does have its own identity. The mask of Michael Myers is terrifying. And Laurie Strode is, I think she's a good character too. And it has that early 2000s teenager feel. It's totally a new generation, maybe a generation that is slightly more relatable to me with my age and everything like that. So maybe that's why I like it. I don't know. I think that the sequences of Michael Myers, like stalking her, and the kill scenes are really scary and impactful and intense. And I really loved the finale of this movie. I gotta say, I wasn't expecting to, because I always thought the Rob Zombie movies were shit in my mind. I'd never watched them. I just assumed that. And based on the first half of this movie, I thought it was shit. So I was happily surprised by the second half. And after the movie ended, I was like, well, cool. I'm glad he made a Halloween 2, because Halloween 1, if not for the first half, the second half was really enjoyable. So if the second movie is just that, but twice as long, it should be good. Halloween 2, 2009. Halloween 2009. Well, the first 20 minutes right out of the gate, amazing. The heavy rain, the atmosphere. You've got Laurie Strode in the hospital. And so I was thinking to myself, damn, are we just going to do a remake of Halloween 2 now? I'm not sure I'm here for it. I wanted the movie to go somewhere new, but its vibes were so on point, and its intensity and relentless Michael Myers stalker action was so good. I was like, fuck, this is good. And then Laurie Strode opens her eyes, and it's all a dream. Oh, God. That's just the worst way to start a movie. It's all a dream? Like, what? So I guess Rob Zombie wanted to make a Halloween 2 remake, but then he wanted to subvert expectations and just do his own thing. So he did the hospital thing like Halloween 2, but then it just immediately is like, nah, it's not that. It's something different. And then the rest of this movie is just absent of Michael Myers. Dude, I don't know. The rest of this movie is kind of trash. I think when Rob Zombie goes off the script of source material, that's when his stuff just gets really bad. We do get a lot of Malcolm McDowell's Loomis character though. And in this movie, Dr. Loomis is kind of off trying to sell his self-help book. And what's interesting, and I have to give this movie props for this, they take what otherwise was a bland reinterpretation of Dr. Loomis from the first movie, and in this movie, they take the character into a complete left turn that I did not anticipate. And he's now this kind of narcissistic, greedy, very pretentious. He thinks he has like all the answers to things, and he's selling his book. And dude, the way Malcolm McDowell performs this, it's so fun. The Dr. Loomis scenes are actually like amazing in this movie. So it's just a complete flip from the first movie. I don't know why or how this has anything to do with the rest of the plot, but his whole subplot is so fun and entertaining, and the performance is so over the top. I was just having a lot of fun watching that. But then when we get to the main storyline, I was just like, this is just a complete drag. I was waiting for some Michael Myers stuff to happen. It doesn't happen again till like the end. And when it does, it's also like dreamy and metaphorical and like, oh God, super underwhelming. And so in the end, it just kind of leaves me like wondering, like, was any of it real? What does this mean? And maybe that's like the point. Maybe Rob Zombie had some sort of like artistic self-exploration type of questions he was trying to ask with this movie. But I don't think Halloween, the franchise, is necessarily the place to do that. And if it is the place to do that, then I don't think he executed it well, because this movie, outside of the first 20 minutes, isn't a Halloween movie or a Michael Myers movie. And what it is enjoyable in some weird vein with the Malcolm McDowell stuff, but the rest of it is pretty much trash. Moving on. Okay, we're now in our fourth timeline. This is the next reboot, the David Gordon Green and Danny McBride reboot, because he's a writer on the series at this point. We're getting Halloween 2018. I can understand why Rob Zombie's movie is called Halloween. It's a remake of Halloween. 2018's Halloween, I do not understand why this movie is called Halloween. I think it's pretty f***ing stupid why it's called Halloween. This is just a sequel to Halloween 1978. And in this timeline, we are now retconning so far as to say H2O doesn't happen, Halloween 2 didn't even happen, just 1978 Halloween happened. So it goes Halloween, Halloween, Halloween kills, and Halloween ends. But like, just calling it Halloween again, I don't like that. It's just called Halloween again, for no good reason. Okay, so now we find Laurie Strode 40 years later. But if you ask me, it's a missed opportunity to call this H4O. Halloween 2018. Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis, returns. Again, this is her fifth time coming back, but the third timeline of her. And so if in the first timeline she had a young daughter named Jamie Lloyd, the second timeline she had a young son who's 17, played by Josh Hartnett, can't remember his name. And in this timeline, she now has a full-grown adult daughter who is not Jamie Lloyd. So none of the other two kids existed. It's now just a different kid, and she has a bit of an estranged relationship with her. They're somewhat close, but her paranoia and her obsession with eventually killing Michael Myers or being afraid of Michael Myers has kind of pushed her daughter and her granddaughter away from her. But I find that interesting because in this timeline, she's only experienced one Michael Myers movie prior to this. And I'm not saying that that wouldn't traumatize her for 40 years, but it's weird that this is the most paranoid and most like aggressively prepared to take on Michael Myers that she is out of any of the like sequels. Anyway, this movie though, when Michael Myers gets, I think he's very effectively set up as being a intense, intimidating character. Like when we do meet him at the penitentiary, we see him from the back, and the way he's set up is talked about as like, oh yeah, he's giving you nothing now and he won't say anything, but he's very aware that you are coming and he's very aware that you're here now. Like, and that's a very scary thought. And I think they do a really great job of setting him up and the fear of him. And then eventually seeing him kind of break out because like a bus falls over as he's being transported. That whole scene, his first kill scene, I think is really scary and really atmospheric with all the fog rolling in, the young boy in the car with the shotgun. And then there's this sequence where Michael Myers returns to Haddonfield and he's just weaving his way through people's homes on Halloween night, but it's still like dusk, it's still light out. And so the streets are filled with kids trick-or-treating, and he's just weaving his way through them and going into people's homes and just killing people in their homes. It's so creepy and unsettling and dark. It's maybe one of the scariest representations and most brutal representations of Michael Myers that we've had. I think that this movie is actually really solid. I really like how all the characters were introduced. I know I was kind of knocking the Laurie Strode character and maybe the way they took her, but I actually, as I think about it more, like as I watched the trilogy and as I watched this movie, I actually like the direction they took her. I think it's It's not the direction we want as an audience, but it's the direction that might make the most sense. And I think that's fascinating. It gives Jamie Lee Curtis something interesting to do and how she can portray herself. The weakest part of this movie for me is its final act, because we eventually get to Laurie Strode's home and she's booby-trapped the whole place and she has lights and all this stuff. And she's like so prepared to take on Michael. But there's all these just really frustrating moments where it's like, she lets enough people die before she activates some of her traps or lights or things. The finale is like an up and down thing. There's some really epic moments and there's some really downward moments. I love Michael Myers' mask. There's so many great Michael Myers moments. I think he's so intimidating in this one. He kills everyone he encounters. And like I said, it's maybe not the best representation of Michael Myers as a character, because I do kind of like his more calculated, is he or isn't he going to kill someone type of stuff in the earlier films. But in this one, he goes in and he is just maniacal. And there's a different element of fear with that. So it's still really good, and its pacing is on point. Its filmmaking is on point. Its vibes are fantastic. It's a good movie. Halloween Kills. Halloween Kills does the same thing where Laurie Strode finds herself in a hospital, like every single sequel to a Laurie Strode Halloween movie does. If you include the Rob Zombie ones, this is the fourth Halloween 2 with a Laurie Strode, and she just ends up in the hospital at the very beginning of the movie. Not that I have a problem with that. It's just kind of funny. It's an ironic thing to point out. But Halloween 2, right out of the gate, Michael Myers escapes the burning house and he kills like 10 firemen. The firemen have axes and they're all ganging up on him, and he kills all of them. And it sets the stakes right away that this Michael Myers is inhuman. He is in fact a superhuman. And then he has the burned mask, which is not my favorite version of the mask, but it's not bad either way. Now, granted, I skipped over the first scene, which there is a kind of 15-minute prelude to all of this, which takes place and fills in the gap of what happened after Halloween 1978, because, 1970, or because Halloween 2 doesn't exist in this timeline. So it gives us the moment where Michael Myers gets captured the first time. And actually, that flashback scene is it's the greatest scene in this whole movie. It really is. It's very good. I love the Michael Myers mask. I love the old school vibe and energy. It has all the old John Carpenter music, which is a huge plus. It has these really beautiful crane shots with the fall leaves and the trick-or-treaters and nighttime, like in the old 70s cars. It's a really good sequence, even if it ends in a way where like a few cops point a gun at him and Michael just kind of like gives in and gets arrested. And then like a few minutes later, we jump to present time where Michael Myers takes out like 10 firemen. In the movie itself, it contradicts itself with Michael's capabilities, but whatever. Now we're to the present day. This movie introduces a new Tommy, grown Tommy from the very first movie, which, like I said last, was played by Paul Rudd, but we're getting like a new kind of brute version of him. And he's like, we're going to band together as a town and prevent Michael Myers from ever coming back here. And if he does, we're going to all gang up on him and kill him. I kind of outlined what the story is, but it's very loose with Tommy. Jamie Lee Curtis is in the hospital. There's all the other characters that we get little bit pieces from throughout. And none of it really comes together in a cohesive way. It's a hard movie to remember because it doesn't have like pacing or structure or character arcs or a story at all. It's just a modge-podge of Michael Myers going around town and killing people, but he kills people in what I would say is more unmemorable and uninspired ways than the previous movie. But again, he kills everyone for no good reason. He's just going around killing people. But we are getting some Michael Myers moments, and every once in a while they're decent. The best Michael Myers moments, I think, are at the end. I gotta give it credit for that. There's some like decent moments at the end with like the stair rail and like the kid in the staircase thing. I'm kind of losing it. This video is going on for a long time, so I'm just like, whew, whatever. Halloween Kills. This movie did fucking piss me off. I think it sucks. I actually think this movie sucks. I'm trying to give it all these positives, but like, I hate how messy this movie is. It's so frustrating to watch for that reason, because it's giving moments weight that don't need weight. There's this whole scene that makes no sense to me, where they're at the hospital and Laurie Strode's daughter, I think her name is Karen, she protects this kind of like guy who escaped the insane asylum because this angry mob led by Tommy is coming after him. but they've never really set up like why they're going after him. And it's obvious he's not Michael Myers. Like, I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And I don't get why she's protecting him. I can buy into that if we get some reasoning for it, but we never get reasoning for it. It just comes out of the blue. And then this guy goes and he jumps off the building and he kills himself. And we get this kind of really swell of emotional music. And Laurie Strode's daughter is crying. And the mob is like, oh no, it's like the wrong guy. And I don't know if this was supposed to be some metaphor for like, look what Michael Myers has turned all these people into. They're all killers now. We're all killers ourselves. And I can get behind that thematic message, but the movie did no structural work to build this moment up and give us that payoff. It just happened all of a sudden. And I was wondering, like, why is this scene happening? And I got to attribute it to like writing issues and the strikes that were happening and the delays with COVID. But that does not change the fact that it's in a movie and it feels out of context and it doesn't work. And then in the final moments, spoiler alert, Karen dies in like a montagey way, spoiler over. And then a mob Tommy's mob surrounds Michael Myers. There's like 50 of them. And they're all beating him up and kicking him and doing whatever. And Michael Myers, he somehow fights his way out of them and kills every single one of them and escapes. And it's like, dude, if we're just going to make Michael Myers this just insane superhuman, it just takes away the fear. Yeah, Halloween Kills, dude. Fuck, this movie's a mess. But the mask's cool. The vibes are good. There are a pretty good amount of Michael Myers moments. Whew. Okay, we made it, folks. We are now to the 2022 Halloween movie, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. Halloween H2O. No, Halloween Ends. God damn, these are getting messy. Can't remember the kind of main guy's name, but he's a young teenager, early young adult, and he's babysitting a boy and a series of events that seem to have Michael involved, but he's never witnessed, affect the scenario in which this young adult accidentally kills the child he's babysitting. It's a very, very dark intro. And I honestly was very moved by it and by this young boy and kind of his story that we start to kind of develop. And then this goes on for, 45 minutes, us following this young kid. He interacts with Laurie Strode and he starts to actually date Yoli. He starts to date Laurie Strode's granddaughter, but he ultimately feels like he's not valuable because he has accidentally killed a human. And I think that's a pretty compelling story. Now, granted, I just don't know what the hell this has to do with Halloween, the franchise. Like, it's just, we're 45 minutes in and I'm like, what? Like, where are we going? That's the first time we see Michael Myers. About 45 minutes in, our main kid gets beat up and he gets thrown down into this kind of sewer area. He walks in and Michael grabs him by the neck. And we get the first scene with Michael. And this is why I call the movie The Curse of Michael Myers, because apparently this interaction with Michael seems to inspire something within this kid. And now the kid kind of gets a little extra deranged. So we see Michael for like a fraction of a minute. And then we still don't see him again for who knows, 20, 30 minutes. I mean, a long time. And I shouldn't just complain that we're not getting Michael Myers. I'm open to new stories, new ideas within the Halloween franchise. And I guess you could say this pays ode to the original concept of let's make a Halloween movie that doesn't have to do with Michael Myers. Sure. But it's not promoted in that way. So it's promoted as like the final showdown between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode. And you can't blame filmmakers for that. That has to do with the studio. Sure, all of those things. But either way, we're over an hour in now and we're following this young kid. And you get invested in his story to some degree. But then he starts bringing people back to Michael Myers. And then Michael Myers starts killing those people. And it seems like Michael Myers is gaining energy and power from this. So I guess in this Michael Myers timeline, he needs to kill people to gain power. And maybe that explains his superhuman ability. This movie's just really boring, dude. Like, eventually the kid, he puts on the mask and he starts killing people and Michael Myers shows up and they kind of tag team some situations, I guess. Eventually the showdown with Laurie Strode happens, like the last 20 minutes of this movie. And first we have to deal with the kid, and the kid's story, you know, you're kind of waiting for it to come to like a meaningful thematic conclusion. It just doesn't. It just doesn't seem to come to any sort of thing. So it just feels like it was all a waste of time or a filler. And if it was just Michael using him to help him gain power, then fine, whatever. But it just, then he shows up and he fights Laurie Strode. Michael, who we've just seen in the last movie as a superhuman, taking out 10 firefighters and an entire angry mob of like 50 people at the end. It's one-on-one with an old Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, who is not strong. And she kicks him in the shin, and he's like, oh, fuck, you know, he's falling backwards. And she's able to pin him down with a couple of knives. And ultimately, she kills him because this is Halloween Ends. Sorry for the lack of spoiler. We've seen this happen 3 times. We've seen a so-called Halloween Ends type of moment with Jamie Lee Curtis 3 times. The first one was the best, and that was H2O. The second one in Halloween 2018 was at least somewhat believable and somewhat rewarding. And then in this one, it's just like, dude, she's way less prepared. The fight is way more unrealistic, uninteresting, uninspired. And this is our only like Michael Myers moment. It's like the only Michael Myers moments. Then suddenly the entire town shows up at her front door, and they kind of drag Michael Myers' body, or they raise Michael Myers' body like he's some king, so like some god, and they take him through the town, and they all carry him, and eventually they carry him to some big grinder, and then, you know, they throw him in the grinder, and we see him like shred. And so I guess it's the conclusion. He's a goner. Oh God, dude, I don't know. And what's so funny is you see some characters in these scenes, like you see the sheriff guy and you see the granddaughter again, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot this trilogy in the very first movie established the granddaughter, established the sheriff, established the daughter, and those characters just have barely any screen time in the second and third movie, but yet they're still characters. No one is given like satisfying character narratives or arcs or anything in the second and third of this trilogy, specifically the third trilogy. And Laurie Strode, her character is just uninteresting at this point, but I guess we get to see her kill Michael at the end, so that's supposed to be satisfying. But the rest of the movie isn't, so whatever. Halloween Ends sucks. This is by far the worst Halloween movie in the entire run of Halloween films. I'm putting it below Resurrections, dude. At least you can go into Resurrections and be like, they were trying something. And that something is a little dated, but they were trying something. This movie is a fucking waste of time. It sucks, dude. And Halloween Kills suck, too. This trilogy was bullshit. The characters were bullshit after the first movie. I'm not a fan of the David Gordon Green Halloween movies. Well, aside from the first one. I like that. And there was a good line at the end of this, though. She says, evil doesn't die, it changes shape. Which I thought was a nice nod to him being called the Shape. Whew. Okay, before we jump into this ranking, I just want to say you should like and subscribe to the channel. Also, you should follow me on Letterboxd because I created a list of my personal ranking from least to favorite of the Halloween movies, and you can see each of my reviews in depth in writing of each of those movies on there. But we're here to find out what the ultimate Halloween movie experience is. So let's get into the rankings of all of these. We're going to run through it in a video montage style. Rounding out the bottom of our list is Halloween Ends with 15.5 out of 55 points. Number 12, Halloween Resurrections, 21.5 points. Yeah, we got some extra points there for story and for Busta Rhymes. Number 11, Halloween 6, 23.5 points. Story was absolute shit on this one. Number 10, Halloween Kills with 25 points. Honestly, in my mind, that movie feels like something I don't want to rewatch. Number 9, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 with 27 points. A movie that doesn't feel very rewatchable either. At number 8 on this list is Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers with 30 points. This one got hurt by the mask a little. Okay, number 7 on our list is Halloween 3 with 36 points. Yeah, so this movie without Michael Myers, where it got a 0 in an entire category, still beat out 6 other films. But you know what? I had to get 5 out of 5 on masks because this movie's about Halloween masks. Number 6, Halloween, the Rob Zombie remake with 37.5 points. A ranking surprisingly high here. Number 5 on this list, the original Halloween 2 with 41 points. Pretty big leap in points into our top 5. Myers moments, top notch. Number 4 is Halloween 2018. This is the remake, or no, shit. This is the sequel to Halloween 1, I guess, but the second attempt at it, or third attempt at it. 42 points. Number 3 is the original Halloween with 43.5. Some may be disappointed that didn't get number 1, but that is why we did this list. Number 2 on this list, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers with 44 points, just barely edging out the first Halloween film. Number 1, our final Halloween movie, the ultimate Halloween movie experience, is going to 1998's Halloween H2O with 45 points out of 55 points. This movie topped out our list because it is one of the most fun Halloween movies on this list. It's also one of the scariest Halloween movies on this list, but I think it has the most compelling Laurie Strode character arc out of any Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis Halloween movie. Well, there you have it, folks. That is the Halloween movie that I think is the best movie for you to watch this Halloween season. I didn't tally any of these up beforehand, so it was kind of fun for me to see where they all kind of fell. A few surprises for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Keep an eye out this Halloween season. I'm going to do a few other slasher franchises like the Scream series, and then I have 2 others planned that are just like this that I'll put out as well. I love you, and we'll see you in the next one.